National Legal Descriptions, Introduction, Business in Today's Real Estate Market, and the Need for Precision. In earlier lessons, you saw how modern real estate professionals operate in a complex business environment, filled with different activities, specialties, and property types. Residential agents focus on single-family and condo sales, while commercial specialists work with office buildings, shopping centers, and industrial parks. Property managers oversee day-to-day operations. Leasing agents structure occupancy, and land sales professionals deal with farms, ranches, and raw development land. In every one of these specialties, one basic question always lurks underneath the deal. Exactly which piece of land are we talking about? In today's real estate market, business is fast-paced, highly regulated, and increasingly data-driven. Lenders securitize loans. Title companies ensure ownership, and investors may never set foot on the property they are financing. None of that works unless the property itself can be described in a way that is permanent, precise, and legally reliable. That is where legal descriptions come in. While an address or a neighborhood nickname might be good enough for a casual conversation, they are not good enough for a deed, a mortgage, or a court. A modern salesperson, even at the national general knowledge level, must understand the basic systems of legal description and how they support markets, contracts, and title. What is a legal description? When a buyer asks, "What exactly am I buying?" the true answer is found in the legal description. A legal description of real property is a written description that accurately locates and identifies the boundaries of a specific parcel to a degree acceptable to the courts in the state where the property is located. The key idea is that the legal description, by itself, must contain enough information that a competent, licensed surveyor can go out in the field and find, measure, and reproduce those property lines. Informal descriptions, such as 100 Main Street, the South 40 acres, or my place by the lake, may be convenient, but they are not legally sufficient for recording or enforcement. Street names can change, house numbers can be renumbered, and general phrases are too vague. For this reason, even when you see an address on a purchase contract or listing, that address is supported somewhere in the paperwork by a formal legal description. A proper legal description gives the property a unique identity, distinct from every other parcel on Earth. This precision helps prevent boundary disputes, protects the chain of title, and allows government agencies and private parties to track ownership and land use over very long periods of time. In practical terms, legal descriptions are required for recording deeds, creating valid mortgages and deeds of trust, drafting leases that will be recorded, and resolving disputes about easements and encroachments. Essential elements of a legal description. Regardless of which method is used, certain elements are always present. The description must identify at least the state and county where the property is located. It must then contain enough detail that a surveyor can locate the boundaries on the ground. That detail can be expressed using distances, directions, reference lines, plat maps, or some combination of systems. The description must enclose a complete area, not just a single line, and it must be internally consistent. For example, if the description begins at a certain point and then walks you around the boundary, the final call must return to the beginning for the description to be valid. If a description references a recorded subdivision plat, that plat must exist in the public records and be accessible by book and page or instrument number. In the United States, 3 basic methods are recognized nationally as acceptable ways to describe land: metes and bounds, the rectangular survey system, also called the government survey or public land survey system, and the recorded plat method, commonly called the lot and block system. Many states use more than one of these methods, depending on the age, location, and type of property involved. Informal descriptions versus legal descriptions. To see the difference, imagine 3 ways to talk about the same property. An agent might say, "This is the Jones house," at 100 Main Street. The neighbors might call it the Old Miller Place on the south 40 acres. But the recorded deed might read the south half of the northwest quarter of Section 14, Township 2 North, Range 1 west of the 6th Principal Meridian, Smith County, Nebraska, or it might identify Lot 6, Block 12, Sunrise Subdivision. According to the plat recorded in Map Book 4, page 57, Recorder of Deeds, Sonoma County, California. Only the last versions are legal descriptions because they use recognized systems that can be accurately reproduced. The informal versions are helpful for conversation and marketing. But when it comes time to close, the legal description is what controls. Metes and bounds, the oldest method. Metes and bounds is the oldest system of legal description used in the United States. It came from English common law and dominated the original 13 colonies and nearby states such as West Virginia, Tennessee, Kentucky, Vermont, and Maine. Even today, many properties in those areas and in rural parts of other states are still described using metes and bounds. The phrase metes and bounds tells you how the system works. Metes refers to the measurements of distance and direction between 2 points. Bounds refers to the fixed reference points, or monuments and landmarks, that define the edges of the property. These monuments can be natural features such as trees, rivers, and rock outcroppings, or artificial markers such as iron pins, survey stakes, and concrete monuments. A metes and bounds description always identifies the city, county, and state. It then establishes a starting point called the point of beginning, or POB. From that point, it describes a series of courses that follow the property boundary. Each course gives a direction, often in degrees, minutes, and seconds, relative to north or south, and a distance, expressed in feet, meters, rods, or chains. The description continues around the property until it returns to the point of beginning. Returning to the POB is essential. If the description does not close, it is not a valid metes and bounds description. For example, a metes and bounds description might say that the property begins at a point on the east side of First Street, a certain distance from the corner of First Street and a boulevard, then runs a specified distance north, then a specified distance east to another boundary, then continues along the boundary of a boulevard, and finally goes back to the starting point. With a compass and measuring tape, a surveyor could walk that entire perimeter. Historically, surveyors using metes and bounds relied on rods and chains to measure distance. One rod is 16.5 feet, and 4 rods make one chain of 66 feet. Today, surveyors may use modern equipment such as GPS and total stations, but the old units still appear in older legal descriptions, and the law respects the original measurements. A challenge with metes and bounds is that some original monuments may have disappeared or changed over time. A stream might shift, a tree may die, or a road may be relocated. In such cases, courts and surveyors look at the original intent of the description, use supporting documents like old maps and deeds, and may prioritize certain types of calls. For example, natural monuments over stated distances to resolve conflicts, rectangular survey system, and the public land survey system. As the United States expanded westward beyond the original colonies, the metes and bounds system proved too slow and irregular to manage millions of new acres. The federal government needed a more standardized and efficient method to divide and sell public lands. The result was the rectangular survey system, also known as the Public Land Survey System, or PLSS. The PLSS is based on a grid of imaginary lines laid out over large areas of land. A principal meridian is a north-south reference line, and a baseline is an east-west reference line. Together, they create an initial point. From this origin, surveyors laid out townships, which are squares 6 miles on each side. Each township, therefore, contains 36 square miles. Townships are identified by their position relative to the principal meridian and baseline. For example, Township 2 North Range 1 West, T2N, R1W, means the township is 2 tiers north of the baseline and 1 column west of the principal meridian. Each township is divided into 36 sections, each 1 mile square. Sections are numbered in a standard pattern beginning in the northeast corner with Section 1, moving west to Section 6, then dropping down a row and moving east again, zigzagging until reaching Section 36 in the southeast corner. Sections can be further divided into halves, quarters, and smaller fractional pieces, such as the north half of the southwest quarter, or even the east half of the northwest quarter of the northeast quarter. A typical rectangular survey legal description might read, the south half of the northwest quarter of Section 14, Township 2 North, Range 1 west of the 6th Principal Meridian, Smith County, Nebraska. Working backwards, you can find the Principal Meridian, locate T2N, R1W, then find Section 14, and finally the specific half-quarter referenced. This system is especially common in the Midwest and Western states, where large tracts of land were once federal public domain. In reality, the earth is curved, and human surveyors make mistakes. Some townships are not perfectly square, and some early surveys were inaccurate. The PLSS accounts for these realities by allowing for correction lines and irregular sections along the township's northern and western edges. These government lots may be larger or smaller than a standard section, but remain legally valid because they reflect the accepted survey on the ground. Recorded plat method and the lot and block system. In modern residential and urban development, buyers and sellers rarely talk about townships and sections. Instead, they deal with lots in a subdivision or units in a planned neighborhood. For these purposes, the recorded plat method, also called the lot and block system, is the most common form of legal description. A plat is a detailed map prepared by a licensed surveyor that shows how a larger tract of land has been divided into individual lots, blocks, streets, and easements. The developer submits the plat to the local planning authority as part of the subdivision approval process. Once approved and recorded in the public records, the plat becomes the foundation for lot and block legal descriptions. A typical lot and block description might read, Lot 6, Block 12, Sunrise Subdivision, according to the plat recorded in Map Book 4, page 57, Recorder of Deeds, Sonoma County, California. This tells you that the property is the 6th lot in the 12th block of a specific subdivision, and it tells the surveyor exactly where to look in the records to find the plat. Once the surveyor pulls the plat map, they can see the meets and bounds details that define each lot's boundaries, as well as the location of streets, utility easements, and common areas. The lot and block method is efficient because it eliminates the need to write long narrative descriptions for every house. It also supports modern planning goals by tying each lot to a larger, approved subdivision design that satisfies zoning, access, and utility requirements. Land surveys and the professionals behind them. Behind every legal description is a survey. A land survey is the scientific process of measuring distances, directions, angles, and elevations to determine the size and shape of a parcel. Surveyors use specialized instruments such as theodolites, total stations, GPS equipment, and levels to create accurate maps and reference points. Surveying itself has several branches. A geodetic survey measures very large areas and must account for the curvature of the earth. These surveys are used to establish major reference points that other surveys rely on, often covering regions, states, or entire countries. A topographic survey focuses on vertical elevation differences and features, such as hills, valleys, buildings, and roads. Government agencies, engineers, and developers use topographic surveys to design roads, drainage systems, ski resorts, or golf courses. A cadastral survey is the type most directly tied to real estate practice. Cadastral surveys establish and reestablish the boundaries between parcels of real estate. When a developer wants to subdivide land into lots. When a homeowner wants to build a fence near a boundary, or when neighbors disagree about where the property line lies, a cadastral surveyor is called in to determine the legal boundary. These surveys often combine field measurements with a careful review of old deeds, maps, and prior surveys to reconcile differences and preserve the intent of earlier descriptions. Plats, boundary surveys, and their role in everyday practice. A plat of survey, sometimes called a boundary survey plat, is the finished map that results from a survey of a particular area. It shows the parcel's boundaries to scale, often including dimensions, monuments, and any visible encroachments or improvements near the lines. In a subdivision, plat maps show multiple lots, blocks, and streets, together with easements for utilities or drainage. Plats serve many purposes. They document public roads and access routes so that each lot owner has a legal way to reach the property. They show where utility lines and easements run, ensuring lots can be served by water, sewer, electricity, and communications. They help local governments verify that lots comply with zoning rules, such as minimum lot size or width. They also support broader land use plans by controlling how a city or county grows over time. Different types of plats exist for different needs. A plat of subdivision shows how one large parcel has been divided into smaller lots. A plat of consolidation does the opposite. It combines multiple parcels into a single tract under one owner. Correction plats adjust errors in earlier plats, while vacating plats legally cancel all or part of a plat when development never occurred or lots remain unsold. For the practicing salesperson, plat maps and boundary surveys are especially helpful when buyers want to know where they can build a pool, whether a neighbor's fence encroaches, or how big the yard really is. While agents do not perform surveys themselves, understanding what a plat shows and how it relates to the legal description makes you more effective and reduces the risk of misrepresenting property boundaries. Metes and bounds in modern practice and an Arizona example. Metes and bounds still appear frequently in modern real estate transactions, particularly for rural or irregular properties. They are also sometimes used within other systems to describe a specific easement or a special parcel that does not conform neatly to a section or lot shape. Because metes and bounds are so tied to physical landmarks and local conditions, they can raise practical legal questions. Consider a property in northern Arizona with a metes and bounds legal description. The listing agent wants to know whether the seller must provide an affidavit of disclosure. Under Arizona law, a seller is generally required to provide this affidavit if the seller is selling 5 or fewer parcels, the parcels are not part of a recorded subdivision, and the parcels are located in an unincorporated area of the county. The fact that the property uses metes and bounds is a clue that it might be an unsubdivided, rural parcel, but it is not the final answer. The wise business practice for an agent is to contact the county to confirm whether the parcel is unsubdivided and in an unincorporated area. This example shows how legal descriptions interact with state statutes and how a salesperson's knowledge of both supports legal compliance and good client service. Why legal descriptions matter in real estate business. Legal descriptions are not just technical details for surveyors and attorneys. They affect many aspects of real estate business. When drafting a purchase contract, the correct legal description ensures that the right property is conveyed. When a lender prepares mortgage documents, the legal description tells the lender exactly what land secures the loan. Title companies rely on legal descriptions to search the chain of title, discover liens and easements, and write policies. Appraisers use the legal description to confirm they are valuing the correct parcel. For specialized professionals, legal descriptions play different roles. A land developer uses the PLSS and plat systems to plan new subdivisions. A farm and ranch broker reads rectangular survey descriptions every day. A commercial broker selling large tracts may need to understand how irregular government lots and meets and bounds overlap within the same area. Even residential agents who mostly see lot and block descriptions should be able to recognize when something is unusual and recommend that their clients obtain professional help. Review summary. In this chapter, you saw that as the real estate industry has grown more complex, the need for precise identification of property has become even more important. A legal description is a written description that accurately locates and identifies the boundaries of a parcel so that a surveyor can later find the same boundaries on the ground. Informal descriptions, such as addresses or nicknames, are helpful for marketing, but are not legally sufficient on their own. You learned that every legal description must identify the general location of the property, typically by state and county, and then provide enough technical detail to enclose a unique area of land. 3 nationally recognized systems are used to create these descriptions. Meets and bounds rely on distances, directions, and physical monuments, starting at a point of beginning and returning to that point. The rectangular survey system, or PLSS, uses a grid of principal meridians, baselines, townships, and sections to divide large areas, especially in the Midwest and Western states. The recorded plat, or lot and block system, uses subdivision maps to identify lots and blocks within approved developments, making residential transactions simpler and more uniform. You also saw how different types of surveys support these legal descriptions. Geodetic surveys establish large-scale reference points. Topographic surveys map elevation and man-made features for construction and planning. And cadastral surveys establish boundaries for legal and tax purposes. Plats and boundary surveys turn these measurements into maps that support everyday transactions, from building fences to recording easements. Finally, you connected legal descriptions to business practice. Accurate legal descriptions are required for recording deeds, creating mortgages, resolving boundary disputes, complying with subdivision laws, and protecting clients. Whether you specialize in residential sales, commercial brokerage, land development, or property management, an understanding of legal descriptions is essential national knowledge for any competent salesperson. Discussion. Why is it risky for a salesperson to rely only on a street address when writing or reviewing a purchase contract? Suggested answer. Relying only on a street address is risky because addresses can be duplicated, changed, or mistyped, and they do not provide enough technical detail to identify boundaries. If the wrong property is accidentally described, or if the address is ambiguous, the buyer and seller may not have a meeting of the minds about what is being conveyed. The correct legal description avoids this risk by uniquely identifying the parcel, protecting everyone involved, and supporting enforceability in court. Imagine you're listing a 10-acre rural parcel described by meets and bounds. What are some practical steps you might take to protect your client and yourself? Suggested answer. You would first obtain and review the current recorded legal description, and if necessary, recommend that the seller hire a surveyor to confirm the boundaries, especially if markers are old or missing. You might ask the county whether the parcel is considered subdivided or unsubdivided, and whether any affidavits or disclosures are required. When showing the property, you would be careful not to guess at boundary lines, and would clearly explain to buyers that exact lines must be confirmed by a surveyor. A buyer is purchasing a home in a new subdivision. The contract shows a lot and block legal description and references a plat book and page. How would you explain the meaning of this to your client in plain language? Suggested answer. You could explain that the developer hired a surveyor to map out the whole subdivision, showing all lots, streets, and easements on a plat map. That map was approved by the local government and recorded in the public records in a specific book and page. The lot and block description in the contract tells the title company and surveyor exactly which shape on that map belongs to the buyer. In other words, Lot 6, Block 12, is the official label for the buyer's future yard and home site on that recorded map. Closing remarks. Legal descriptions may look technical and intimidating at first, but they are simply the language that the real estate industry uses to answer one fundamental question: where exactly is this property? As you move through your career in today's real estate market, you will encounter a variety of property types and professional specialties. No matter what niche you choose, you will always be dealing with land. And land must be described accurately. The more comfortable you become reading and interpreting legal descriptions, the more confident and valuable you will be to your clients, your broker, and other professionals in the transaction. You do not need to be a surveyor, but you do need to recognize the three major systems, understand their basic structure, and know when to call in expert help. This chapter gives you that national foundation. In later chapters, you will build on this knowledge when you study encumbrances, easements, subdivision laws, and title insurance, all of which depend on clear and accurate legal descriptions.